spelling than I normally see. Then I guess, yeah.
Right, right. And it's actually really just a real big thrill to be interviewing you, and thank you.
Yeah,
Especially,
definitely.
I don't mean to sound weird or stalkingly or anything like that, but there are moments when I listen to to that first hockey album just on a weird endless loop sort of a thing.
That's so cool. That's when did you discover that album? Was that like when it came out?
I think so. It was actually uh, quite interesting because I heard Song Away, I think, on the radio, and I didn't
Uh-huh.
hear it for a while, and it took quite a bit to find out what it was. And the weird thing, and I guess this is where I'm gonna jump into the interview, is it didn't, to me, on first listen, I didn't equate it to 2000s indie rock. I thought this must surely be something like a weird Talking Heads song that I haven't heard, or something like that. And boy, I must be pretty stupid not to notice, because it sounds amazing.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I recorded that song in the studio with the Talking Heads guitarist Jerry Harrison. So like I was 11, so it's funny that you pick up on that. But yeah, totally, it's got that like retro sound, and it's like a little more hi-fi than some of our other stuff because that song we did in a proper studio. The rest of the album, a lot of it we did just like in our basement with like one microphone kind of thing. But that one has like a little bit more like sparkly sound, so like it sounds like a lost out like record of it, yeah, like an old band or something.
It's quite brilliant. And is it okay if I touch upon hockey for a while, or?
Totally, you can do whatever. Yes, yeah, just whatever's interesting you. If something comes up and I'm like, oh, I want to talk about this, I'll let you know or whatever. But yeah, just feel free to do whatever.
That's brilliant. Thanks. Thanks. Well, I'm wondering, I guess, about the climate of rock at the time and of recording an album. From what I read, and it takes a bit of digging, but I understand that there was quite a lot of interest for your band and for that batch of songs in the beginning, but that it took quite a while to get them recorded and then released, and all the promotion that comes with it. I'm wondering what that's like, if that even exists now.
Um, well, at the time, yeah, it's like we started the band maybe in like 2004, and then wait, no, earlier, like 2002. And so there was a long time between that and like any interest, like we lived in different cities, we traveled around and stuff. And then when we made Mind Chaos, like an original version of Mind Chaos that had maybe not all the same songs as that later release that came out. So we had that release, and then we went on a tour. We went on a tour like in out of Portland, Oregon, where we were playing to like between 2 to like 30 people a night, and like sleeping at strangers' houses. And we went on a tour. Our van at that time was a veggie van, like it ran on vegetable oil. We converted it. I don't know if
Right.
you've heard about that. So we were like stealing oil, or not stealing, actually. It was like whatever. A lot of times they gave it to us, but put oil in the van. So it was this crazy tour. And during that time, that was when like a radio station picked up our album or our song, like Song Away or something else in England. And that sort of like set like that on fire for like, the record labels and that sort of thing. And then it all started. And then we went back to the studio and added a few more songs and then put out Mind Chaos. Like we'd already recorded the Song Away that you heard and everything, even when we were on that tour.
It's
Um,
very interesting,
yeah,
because it sounds like an album of singles in a way, which I guess Britain always kind of had a passion for those sort of 3-minute guitar singles.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Is it? And this is, I'm just wondering about this. I'm not sure if it's still right to call it that now, with the internet being so important. But um, is the scene in the US, or the scenes, because it's such a large place, much different from the UK, where guitar bands, especially in the 2000s, seem to have gotten more notice?
Is the scene different in the US, you're wondering? Like
I, I
now?
I think at that time, I'm wondering about that time, because for
That
example,
time.
I know the Enemy were one of your champions, and the Enemy always had that style of promoting a certain band and just I guess hyping them up in a way, if I'm not, if I'm not
Yeah. I think what I remember from the time, I mean, was that it was like 10 years ago, pretty wild. But what I remember is that like England was just a little bit more like unified and like in its music, like you get played on the BBC radio, it's like syndicated all around the country. The NME had they just like, I guess, you know, it's a smaller landmass. It's just like more of like, what would be the word? Just it could spread, like a trend would pick up much quicker and broader in England. Whereas America was just, you know, there are more people and there's just so many more niches and factions. And so there wasn't like a central like heart in America that you could just like blow up as quickly. Whereas England, I think, still had that infrastructure, which is, I think, why a lot of bands would go to England first, get this big mass exposure and get this like little wave that then could come back to the US and help spread around. Because, you know, does that make sense? So like,
It
yeah,
does.
yeah,
I think so, yeah.
yeah.
And I'm wondering about, well, the songwriting itself, because, well, one of the things I noticed, I guess one of the things why it was hard to pick up when this music was actually made is that the lyrics are usually quite sophisticated, quite complex, and so is the songwriting. And I'm wondering about how that worked, the songwriting itself, and whether you feel that maybe, you know, the lyrics and the subject matter sometimes went maybe a bit over the heads of the audience that was looking for something a bit more simple, I guess, in those days.
Yeah, I think you're maybe right. I mean, um, yeah, I mean, I always like I sometimes I was almost like jealous of bands that could be more like vague or impressionistic with their lyrics. Like I don't think of like I'm not thinking of anything as better or worse, but it's just like I remember, you know, we were compared to like the Strokes a bit and other bands like that, and I thought their lyrics were really cool, but you know, like it's just more impressionistic, like artistic sweeps of like kind of poetic, a little bit more not you don't understand what it's saying, but yeah, for some reason I've never been able to do that well. It just didn't come out right. So I don't know. I've always had that. I don't know what my mind was up to, but I just like, I could only do things that excited me or made sense to me. And for some reason, it made sense to just, at that time, I had this very like hyper aware, like meta perspective on myself and things that I'm doing. And that was where I was at then. I'm at a different spot now, but then I was like very, yeah, in my head and just, I needed to feel excited about like, about saying something. I think in part also because I didn't think of myself as a great singer. Like it was more like a self-stylized voice, and I was like, I didn't think like, it's not like I could sing like the national anthem or like something, like it had to be like me like feeling good about what I'm saying or just feeling like there's energy behind what I'm saying, you know? And so I think that's what kind of made the lyrics, yeah, like have a lot of like just like ideas or concepts and like maybe, you know, trying to be smart, maybe achieving it sometimes, maybe not, who knows, whatever, but like going in that direction for me. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if people got like, I think some people picked up on some, enjoyed some of the lyrics and stuff.
Right. It's very interesting that you say that, I guess, and it sort of gives everyone trying to sing hope, because it's one of the most distinctive voices of that period, at least for me. And it does sound very, I guess, as you mentioned, it sounds positive, I guess is the word, but also very eager. It sounds like somebody getting out of college and just very hopeful about life in the future. And I'm
Yeah,
wondering about the songwriting as well, because it's not your routine three chord guitar in many ways. It has traces of I guess funk and maybe soul and things like that as well.
yeah.
I'm wondering how
Uh-huh.
that worked. I think initially I read that you worked with a drum machine when beginning
Yeah,
to perform.
yeah. Hockey, like before we added, we existed as a band with a drum machine for a long time. Like for me, that funk or like the soul and like disco elements came from, because I grew up in New York City, which is where I am now. And like I was like, in my first bands before I even sang or was really into music were actually rap bands, hip hop. I was
Oh
like,
wow.
yeah, but like in New York, it was just like we just, I don't know, whatever it was, just had there was a heavy just like rhythmic influence, you know, like I don't know what that was. Like yeah, just like disco music, drum machines, beats, like loved all that stuff. And when, you know, and like LCD Sound System was like a band that would like came up at that little around that time and influenced us. And also, so that was the influence. And also when hockey started, we were at school and our main goal was like we wanted to to make party music in a lot of ways, like go to these parties and play and make people just lose their minds. So that was like, that was the experiment. And with, you know, it's good to have rhythm when you want to do that. I don't know if you, can you do it without rhythm? That'd be really interesting. Can you make people like dance and go crazy? Or I mean, maybe you could get like a more like trippy, like surreal freak out, but rhythm definitely is kind of key for a party atmosphere.
Right, right. And does that sort of segue into your work at the moment, which I guess is, I've heard the first single, Pop Off City, and I assume that's mostly made using electronics for the most part and samples and things like that. And does it sort of segue into your interest right now?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because right now, like I'm in a very different place now, like mentally, like that song, like, okay, like, yeah, with hockey and in those days, like I came out of New York, I had this background of music that I wanted to make, and like I executed it. I was like, I had a vision and I wanted it to sound like this, have those elements, and I knew that. And now, to be honest, I'm like, I've so like I don't really care what this genre or any, I don't care. Like I don't have a vision exactly for a genre. I mean, I do sometimes, but then I miss, like that's much more, I hold that much more loosely now. I almost just like, I don't know, we'll get to maybe what I am doing. I don't know. But like I've let some of that go. So with this song, it's a little more spontaneous. Like I also sometimes I'll collaborate with some people and bring in whatever they're doing a little bit. Like some of the other songs in the album, this album is actually a little bit like Mindcast in that way that it sprawls, like the genres just go crazy. So like there's some of these albums like I mean some of the songs have beats that are like hip hop beats, like trap ish, like because I was like on the street in LA and I was playing on the street in LA a lot, and like I don't know, it was just like I was sort of connecting on this, like those songs with those kinds of beats were kind of fun to play out there. And so I had a friend program, so you know it's got like the rattly hi-hats and 808, so that's some songs like that. So yeah, so now I'm just much more like open, like I don't know, just like, you know, collaborate, lead, whatever is inspiring, like I'll just go crazy, like I don't really care that right now. Maybe it'll change, but the vision is more broad, like I'm just letting it go. So the last song, did you hear what I also did one, Burning Up on Reentry was the first one I put out. It's
I'm afraid not, but I'd really love to hear the whole
okay.
album. I was actually going to ask you about that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but and this one is from the time I was living in LA, like this person like crooning on it, you know, there's that like croon sample.
Right, right.
That's my friend who I like moved to LA to start a band with like a few years ago, and then that band didn't really, we kind of that didn't end up working out, but we're still friends, and I got that sample from him from that summer, so I just placed that sample in, and then I, yeah, made the song around that.
It's very interesting. And what are, and sorry about being naive about this, but what are the plans about the, I guess the full project, the album, or how you're planning to sort of release that?
Yeah, I guess I'm just going like putting out some singles and then I'll release it. The reason why it's sort of taking a little bit of time, like I thought maybe it'd be out, is just because it takes me a second to like figure out like art and videos and like kind of have a little bit of fun stuff around it, which I'm having fun doing. So that's why it's like I already have all the songs done, but it's fun to kind of create stuff for it. So my plan is to, I don't know, maybe another single or two and then put out the album.
Right, right, right. And would it, I'm actually curious about, and you mentioned this, and I also read it in your bio about, I guess it was moving to LA and performing, like you said. I think they'd call it busking around
Yeah,
England, but I'm
yeah,
not sure if that's the
yeah,
right word. And
yeah.
how does that work? And what was that experience like? Was it intimidating? Was it something that you sort of welcomed to begin with?
Oh my God, no, it was really intimidating for me because like a lot of my, because when I was in hockey, you know, that band, we were doing our thing. And then when that band sort of stopped working, for me, like for my ego, that wasn't fun. Like I was like, oh, like I wanted to, you know, like success was important to me. And so then that band started sort of, you know, deteriorating for a lot of reasons. And then when I was living in LA, going to play on the street at first was like this the probably like the quintessential like attack on my ego. Like this is the definition of not success. Like people are just passing you by. No one, you know, 1 out of 100 people are interested in what you're doing. So it's like it was definitely like I was really nervous the first few days. First time I did it, like really nervous, like felt just like my nervous system was going crazy. But then when I got over that, it was really fun. Like it was almost more fun than some of the like sold out shows I was playing. And actually, it was more fun than the sold out shows that I played sometimes because I also had like a sign I said in the bio, like I haven't had a sign that said like free life coaching, let's talk. So I'd like put that in front of my piano. And then so I'd be playing, and then I would have all these conversations with people because I was actually was getting like trained to be a life coach. Like there is that. I mean, you can get it was like a year-long program. It's like pretty intense and really cool. So it's like and it's like a legit thing. I mean, the word sounds a little like fluffy maybe, but it is like you really do learn to like listen to people and like let go of your own you know, impressions or projections about what they might need or should do. And it's like a lot closer to therapy, but just, or like, you know, you're really with someone and listening to them and their life. The difference between that and therapy is that it's a little bit more, there's like a action component. It's like a little bit more like goal centered or forward focused. So it brings in that element, whereas therapy doesn't necessarily have to have that element. But so anyway, I was being trained in that. So I was out there like playing and talking to people and like just loving it, man. Like I'd be on the street for sometimes like 8 hours or like say like without, you know, leaving
Wow.
because it was just like I just loved it and had all these talks with people and I would do. And one of the spot that I ended up playing, I don't know if I said this in the bio also, but was on the corner of Sunset and Vine. I started playing there like every Saturday night, which was literally I could see like Capitol Records building like 2 blocks away looming up. Like so when I first willed my thing there, I was like, oh my, like it was kind of depressing for like a second, like a few minutes. I was just like, oh my God, like what am I doing? Like I used to be like doing, and then, but then I had so much fun again, just on this corner, just like, yeah, just me talking to people and playing and like getting good responses from people sometimes, but it's just fun.
That sounds amazing, especially since I guess one of the differences between like what a record label does and genuine excitement is that a lot of times if it's just 2 or 3 or 5 people that are genuinely excited in something, they move it forward, as opposed to sometimes record labels shift, you know, millions of albums, but nobody's really that excited. And I'm wondering about that, about just the interaction with people directly, so face to face, like you mentioned, and also about maybe it's a bit complicated, but what were some of those philosophies that I guess made you want to become a life coach and sort of change your perspective a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, um, so the first question was sort of the difference between like record companies becoming.
Uh, I guess that as well. I'm thinking that a lot of times they push their product, but it's that the small communities that are really excited in something that
Yeah,
actually generate.
yeah. No, that's interesting because like, yeah, it's really it's like it's an interesting question, like in the sense that I do feel like I don't know, I guess like, yeah, even though I was right with hockey, there was a broader reach, but playing on the street, I had great interactions with people and like really cool ones. I mean, I've had some interactions, like one guy I still we follow each other on Instagram and he came to me, he was like, man, like he was like a musician and he was like he's like been was kind of working with like Dr. Dre or like other big people, but his career wasn't quite taking off, right? And we had this whole talk and that guy was like, you know, inspired, you know, we're inspiring each other, but you know, he left that talk like, yeah, like I'm okay. I know what I got to do, whatever. And he's right now, I mean, on Instagram, he's like writing with like Rihanna. He's like doing crazy stuff. It's not like that's from the talk necessarily, but it's just been fun, you know, to connect with people on that different level and have like, you know, who knows what kind of impact you have, and maybe what's the difference if you have a great impact or connection with 1, 2, 3 people versus more people. Like I've kind of like, I don't know, I don't see things necessarily in terms of scale being the end all be all of importance, you know? But
Right.
yeah, you know, if that makes sense, like having a great connection with some people is just in a sense, what's the difference between that and Madison Square Garden? I mean, there isn't actually anything necessarily. In
Yeah.
perception, there is, but Madison Square Garden afterwards, that place goes silent and everyone's back in their lives, you know?
Right. 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 And I was also wondering, asking about, uh, I guess, whether these changes sort of occurred naturally because you were out there and you were playing, or whether there were some, I guess, underlying philosophies that made you sort of change your life goals, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. Because there were things like when I basically like I discovered just when I was in hockey and stuff, I would like read a lot of like philosophy and things like this, but it was nothing that like I really could like applied to my life. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like it was all sort of like heady and interesting and abstract, and it was exciting a little bit, but it didn't guide any of the ways that I lived. And also like I grew up in New York, and it was like a liberal sort of intellectual, a little more hard edged um, atmosphere, and where and what I ended up discovering, where sort of things probably were more, you might find them in like the self-help section of a bookstore when this is
Right.
post hockey, right? And like I'd never been in that section of the bookstore, but when I read my first book like that, the book was actually called The Game of Life and How to Play It. That was the first book. It was written in like the 30s by this a woman named Florence Scovel Shinn, and like there was some interview of somebody I watched who mentioned that book, and I was interested. I was like, oh, I wonder what that book is, and I got it. And when I read it, I was like so surprised at what it was. Like I wasn't expecting it to be like that. But that book was like sort of like universal interpretations of the New Testament, like Jesus and the Bible, like universal um, sort of like philosophies around that, and like how to apply that to your life, or like just living with more whatever, like trust or joy or presence, all those kinds of things. I was like, huh, it just like rang a bell, and that just like my whole life just like went into a new road. Like being a life coach, man, like no, when I was in hockey, I was terrified of people. not I mean not like literally, but I would not be talking to people like that. I didn't think that would make me happy. But anyway, so after reading that book, yeah, just like not just led me down the line of, I don't know if you're familiar with just like classic stuff around like modern universal spirituality, like Eckhart Tolle and all that kind of stuff. Made a lot
Sure.
of sense to me. And that just like, since then I've read just like, I don't know, hundreds of books in that along those different lines. And that just made a lot of sense to me, and just sort of like embodying that and applying that to myself and to my life and how I live. And that's in a sense what gave me like sort of the courage or the inspiration to want to go out on the street and like get over the fears, because it was still hard to do. But I just, yeah, that really, yeah, and that's sort of like still where I'm at now, more like in that zone, you know what I mean? And I still work as like I work as a life coach now. Like that's my job. I work with a company and also have some private clients. So it's like later today, as I do, I like talk to people about their lives and stuff.
It's very interesting. And sorry if I may ask just one more question about that, because
Yeah.
it's something that I'm interested in as well.
Mm.
Um, I don't know how to put it, but do you notice not just differences, but progress in certain areas of your life that you're interested in improving once you begin learning these things and just going step by step and doing that over time?
Like, do I notice progress in like in what kinds of areas? Would you say? Yeah.
I'm assuming that a lot of people that begin being interested by these kind of philosophies, they're looking to improve maybe specific things, whether it's health-wise,
Yeah.
financial, their general well-being.
Yeah.
Does it work in that way, or maybe I'm
Yeah.
asking?
No, I get it. It's such an interesting question, because for me, it's almost like the self-help and all this stuff, in a way, it kind of tricks you into it. This is my experience. And then it's like, then you learn like what it was really getting you into a little bit later, in a sense. Like for me, when like some of the early things I was reading in that book even were like saying things like, it was basically saying, well, how do I explain it? It's a little bit hard, but like it basically like, okay, like at first you're like, oh wait, like I get how I can use these principles to like be better, like be more creative, be a better, like be a more prolific artist, be happier and all this stuff. But then, so that's sort of the initial pull, kind of speaks to a little bit of like the ego and like wanting to be better, which isn't bad. That's fine. But then as I got deeper and deeper into it, it actually was like, and seeing kind of what it was interesting. It just made me realize just more and more things about just like the universality of like all of us, all people being connected, like the fact that I'm not different or more special than other people in any way or anything like that. So it actually was like, even though my ego kind of did latch onto it, it opened up things that I didn't expect in the beginning. Like, wait, like, uh, like wanting to just connect with people more and not feeling, not like trying to be better or like work on my status in the world, you know? Anything that, you know, those things can change or come, like maybe your status goes up, maybe it goes down, but that's not the goal anymore, if that makes sense.
Right, right. It's
Because
very,
yeah, and it was really freeing to me actually to see that, like I'm not, it doesn't make me happy, and it doesn't work to feel like you're trying to get status or be cool. Like letting go of being cool is cool.
which is very interesting that you'd say that, because I guess hockey, especially if people watch the the video and the pictures, were very cool, especially for that period, or it looked like that to me.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, does that how should I say this? Does that fit into your direction right now, because you seem more interested in more electronic kind of music, or is it also a sort of distinct direction that diverges from hockey? You wanted to do something that doesn't necessarily remind people of hockey.
Yeah, as far as like the sound, I wouldn't even mind if something showed up that sounded like hockey. Again, I'm just kind of going with, like I said, like what is showing up a little bit, like as far as like some collaborations or just like what strikes my ear. So it's not very intentional. Like I wouldn't mind if there was sort of a hockey-ish sounding track that showed up, and maybe it will. But I'm just sort of flowing a little bit.
It's very interesting. And in closing, I do like to ask some uh, rather silly questions, and maybe a lot of them are silly as it turns out. But
Yeah.
what was that line about this not being Roxy music? I've always wondered about that, just as somebody hearing the song a lot.
Oh, that's so funny. But it was a little bit nonsensical. It was like at the time we were in the studio with Jerry Harrison, and we were listening to a lot of Roxy music,
Right.
and it really doesn't make a lot of sense, I guess. It was just, I was just having so much fun with the words, you know, and we were listening to all this Roxy music, and we're just like, maybe, yeah, doesn't make any sense.
But just the style of the singing and the lyrics, they're brilliant, and I'm really excited to hear the complete album. And if I may ask in closing, may have touched on this before, do you have a plan of maybe a date when the full project will be out?
Um, I don't know yet. I mean, I'd hope to say like April sometime, maybe even a little sooner. I'm just like, yeah, when I get this stuff together. But yeah, I'd say hopefully in April.
That's brilliant. And if hopefully we are able to, or live venues return and live music, do you have any ideas of how to perform this live? Or
No, but yes, hopefully live venues do come back. Before the pandemic, I moved to New York, and I was doing the same thing in the subways. Like I was playing with my sign and talking to them in the subway. So I want to do that. I would definitely like to do that again. But it'd also be fun to play in venues. I also have I would love to do something like where I did the big vision, in the sense with is be to be fun to play at like colleges or schools, where you like play, but then maybe also do like a little talking, like about like, you know, life principles, life coaching stuff, whatever, all that stuff, or even like meet with off stage, like in a cool setting, rather like a group coaching setting, or one-on-one coachings or something. That would be really fun to me too. Um,
that sounds
but
awesome, and it sounds like it would make for awesome content as well. Yeah, if you chose to
yeah,
record that and put it online, that's definitely something I'd watch.
yeah, cool. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's weird because it's like, I don't know, it's not very like rock and roll, you know. It's like I used to have that rock and roll mentality, more like wanting to be cool, wanting to be aloof, wanting to have sunglasses, wanting to be like, you know what I mean, that vibe. But now it's like, I don't know. But I don't know. What does that strike you in any way? So like,
It does, I guess. It's very interesting because, like I said, the little bit that I knew visually of hockey, I knew mostly the music was of this very cool sort of band that, reminds you of, I guess, Interpol or the Strokes, or people like that just look
yeah,
too cool for the world. So the whole talk and the questions you answered, this was just fascinating, to be honest, to me.
well,
It's
yeah,
brilliant.
awesome. It's definitely been a journey, because like that was like me 10 years ago. So I was in that zone. So I have changed a lot. I
It's
don't even.
brilliant.
But yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for the talk, and I'm really looking forward to the album and hopefully to seeing more of what you mentioned, those talks, and really connecting further down the line. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Edward. It's been really fun. Maybe we'll do another talk like when the album comes out or something like that.
That would be brilliant. I'd absolutely love that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for the support. It's been really fun talking this morning.
Thank you as well. Real thrill. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Take care. Bye.
See you.